A washing machine dumps roughly 15 gallons of clean, plant-safe water down the drain with every single load. A shower dumps another 17 gallons, and a bathroom sink throws away another 8 gallons before breakfast even happens. Meanwhile, the municipal water company gets paid to spray fresh drinking water on tomatoes an hour later. That drain water was never really waste at all. It's known as greywater, and farmers used every drop for centuries. This video breaks down how to build a complete greywater loop for under $200 total. That system quietly waters an entire food garden automatically while showering, sleeping, and doing regular laundry continues normally. By the end of this video, exactly which drains to tap and what to buy becomes completely clear. That gap between water treated as waste and water genuinely usable rarely gets noticed until someone calculates it. What to skip and how to keep the whole system legal in most states also gets fully covered. Here's what nobody explains at the typical hardware store about household water use patterns overall. The average American household burns through more than 300 gallons of water every single day currently. About 30% of that goes outside onto lawns, gardens, and orchards under typical household usage patterns. In genuinely dry regions, that outdoor percentage climbs past 60% of total household water use easily. That represents real wasted expense, not simply wasted water, once actual monthly costs get properly calculated. At roughly a penny per gallon, and rates keep climbing steadily, that adds up to $30 to $90 monthly. Watching a water meter spin during peak summer tends to be exactly what pushes people toward real alternatives. That range covers simply keeping a garden alive through a typical summer under standard municipal water pricing. Meanwhile, exactly the water needed already flows directly through the house every single day without exception. Roughly 40 gallons per person daily comes from shower, sink, and laundry water combined together. That water stays clean enough for plants while being dirty enough to head straight for the drain regardless. Every time a hose gets turned on for watering, that water meter keeps quietly clicking away expensively. Hose timers, soaker lines, and even expensive rain barrels rarely fix the actual underlying problem here. A house already produces hundreds of gallons of usable irrigation water weekly, sending it straight to treatment plants. Ancient engineering solving a modern problem is easy to overlook until the historical precedent gets pointed out clearly. That represents the exact leak this entire video sets out to properly plug once and for all. Greywater isn't some new trendy invention at all. Farmers have genuinely been doing this for many centuries already. In ancient Rome, bathhouse runoff historically irrigated entire olive groves through simple engineered channels. Persian gardens historically ran on household drain water routed carefully through dedicated clay channels for irrigation. Rural homesteads across the American West quietly reused wash water for orchards well into the 1950s out of necessity. Then, indoor plumbing arrived widely, and building codes made a specific decision affecting all household water afterward. All used household water, from showers, sinks, and washers, got legally lumped together with genuine toilet sewage. A single regulatory decision made decades ago still shapes how most households handle water without much thought. One single pipe led away from every property in one direction, regardless of how clean that water actually was. That decision proved convenient for cities to manage, but it proved genuinely terrible for household gardens everywhere. A permit-free path forward already exists in several states. Most homeowners simply haven't checked their own local rules. 5 states have already quietly reversed that older approach, updating regulations to reflect modern greywater understanding. Those states now allow simple laundry to landscape greywater systems with no permit required under basic guidelines. Some states allow moving up to 400 gallons of greywater daily without needing any formal permit. Other states allow simpler systems handling up to 250 gallons daily, under that exact same approach. The law has genuinely caught up in several states. Most homeowners simply never received that particular update. Regulatory catch-up rarely gets publicized well, leaving most homeowners unaware their state already updated the rules. No plumber and no permit gets required in most of these states for a basic system like this. Just a single weekend and less than $200 covers the entire realistic project cost involved. Now for breaking down the 7 pieces making up this complete under $200 Greywater loop system. First, the 3-way diverter valve, functioning as the genuine heart of this entire system overall. This single component costs between $15 and $25 through most standard hardware store suppliers. A 3-way diverter valve is simply a plumbing fitting featuring 1 inlet and 2 separate outlets. Flipping the handle. One direction sends water to the sewer, exactly like normal household plumbing operates. Flipping it the other direction sends that same water straight out towards the garden instead entirely. A $20 valve preventing an entire system failure is the kind of detail worth taking seriously up front. This valve is exactly why the entire system stays safe, legal, and fully reversible at any moment. Washing a load of heavily soiled diapers, greasy rags, or bleach-heavy whites means flipping back to sewer mode. Washing a normal, everyday load of clothes means flipping the valve over toward the garden mode instead. Nobody ever has to fully commit either direction permanently, since switching stays instant and effortless throughout. Practical installation involves buying a 1-inch brass or PVC diverter rated for continuous water flow. Mounting it on the wall behind or beside a washing machine at roughly waist height works best. Labeling the handle positions clearly with a permanent marker, sewer and garden, prevents any future confusion. Watching soapy water reach a garden bed for the first time tends to be a genuinely satisfying moment. Any standard hardware store carries these valves, so no specialty supplier ever really becomes necessary here. That single valve functions as an on-off switch, a safety net, and legal compliance all combined. The valve alone, though, never actually waters anything on its own without additional supporting components involved. Second, the washing machine bypass line, unlocking the single biggest Greywater source found anywhere in most houses. An average high-efficiency washer uses around 14 gallons per load under typical modern washing conditions. A standard older top loader can hit 30 to 40 gallons per load under similar washing conditions. The average American family runs about 300 loads of laundry across a typical calendar year. Free water arriving with every single load of laundry compounds into real savings across an entire year. That works out to between 4,200 and 12,000 gallons of usable water flowing yearly. The bypass installation stays genuinely simple, disconnecting the washer's drain hose from its standard standpipe first. Connecting that same hose to the inlet side of the 3-way diverter completes that first step. Running 1-inch rigid PVC pipe from the garden side outlet through a wall into the yard follows. Redirecting water that already flows through a house daily feels obvious in hindsight once the system is running. Total cost runs about $30 to $50, covering pipe, elbows, and a bulkhead fitting for wall penetration. This entire system works without needing any additional pump, since the washer already has one built in. That existing pump easily pushes the same water 20 or 30 feet horizontally out toward a garden. Mulch doing 3 separate jobs at once is exactly the kind of efficiency worth designing an entire system around. No additional equipment ever becomes necessary beyond what the washing machine already includes by factory design. Now that the biggest water source gets captured, where that water actually lands matters just as much. Third, the mulch basin network, making this entire system legal, sanitary, and genuinely effective all at once. This piece costs about $20 to $40 in materials through most standard garden supply sources. A mulch basin is simply a small depression dug near each plant intended to receive greywater. That depression runs roughly 12 to 18 inches deep and 2 to 3 feet wide typically. It gets filled with wood chips or coarse bark mulch covering the buried greywater line completely. A basin dug once, continuing to work reliably for years, proves this system rewards upfront effort well. The greywater line ends directly inside that basin, buried safely underneath the mulch layer throughout. That mulch layer performs 3 separate jobs simultaneously across the entire greywater filtration and distribution process. It filters out lint, hair, and soap residue biologically before that water ever actually reaches bare soil. It prevents any surface pooling, which nearly every state's greywater code specifically prohibits for health reasons. It also holds moisture directly at the root zone, cutting evaporation losses by 25 to 50%. Building 1 basin per tree, 1 per shrub, or 1 shared basin per vegetable row works well. Cheap 1/2 inch or 3/4-inch tubing, runs from the main line to each individual basin. Capturing water that would otherwise be wasted during a shower's warm-up phase costs nothing beyond a bucket. Capping the end of every branch line with a removable fitting allows easy flushing if clogs occur. Digging 6 basins across one weekend typically takes roughly 3 hours with just a shovel and mulch. Years later, those same basins keep working reliably while wood chips break down into rich, dark soil. Next up covers the source most homesteaders completely overlook when first considering gray water collection systems. Fourth, the shower bucket protocol, costing just $5 to $15 while capturing surprisingly significant water volume. The average shower runs at roughly 2.1 gallons per minute across about 8 minutes total. That works out to roughly 17 gallons per shower under typical unmodified household shower usage patterns. In a family of 4, that adds up to 68 gallons daily, simply walking straight down the drain. A week of honest measurement reveals more about real water use than any rough estimate ever could. The protocol itself stays embarrassingly simple, placing a 5-gallon bucket inside the shower during use. During the warm-up phase, those 30 to 90 seconds waiting for hot water, that bucket catches cold flow. That particular water never actually touched anyone's body, staying cleaner than what comes out of most garden hoses. During the shower itself, that same bucket catches excess splash and rinse water pooling near the feet. Emptying it into the nearest garden bed on the way to breakfast completes that simple daily routine. Repeating that same process daily adds up to real measurable water savings across an entire season easily. A garden that once felt like a financial risk can become one of the most water-efficient parts of a property. 1 week of honest tracking in a household of 3 captured roughly 42 gallons total that week. Matching water source to plant type prevents most of the common mistakes beginners make with this system. Across an entire summer, that scales to roughly 1,000 gallons of free irrigation water collected. That entire process requires 0 plumbing, 0 permits, and 0 installation work of any kind whatsoever. For renters, strict HOA residents, or anyone not ready to touch actual pipes yet, this represents a solid start. This alone can realistically carry a small raised bed garden through an entire dry summer season. That bucket approach only works well once someone actually knows which plants can safely receive this water though. Fifth, the plant match. Since not every plant genuinely thrives when watered consistently with household gray water. Getting this particular detail wrong is exactly how many beginners accidentally kill their entire garden quickly. A simple design rule, splitting trees from leafy greens, solves most compatibility questions without much extra thought. Getting it right costs absolutely nothing at all. It simply requires understanding some basic plant compatibility knowledge. Gray water runs slightly alkaline, carries mild soap residue, and stays lower in dissolved minerals than rainwater. That matters enormously since different plant species carry very different tolerances for that specific water chemistry. Excellent gray water candidates include fruit trees of nearly every kind: apples, pears, plums, peaches, and citrus varieties. Berry bushes like blackberries and raspberries also handle gray water exceptionally well under typical garden conditions. Ornamentals like roses, hibiscus, and most flowering shrubs also tolerate gray water application without much issue at all. Nut trees, grapevines, and nitrogen-fixing plants like beans and peas planted in mulch basins work well too. Switching detergents feels like a hassle until the actual cost difference turns out to be negligible. Good gray water candidates requiring extra care include tomatoes, peppers, squash, cucumbers, and corn under proper application. Anything where the edible fruit grows above ground, without the water directly touching that edible portion, qualifies here. Herbs like rosemary, thyme, and oregano actually prefer the drier, slightly alkaline soil gray water tends to create. Plants to avoid entirely include leafy greens, where edible leaves might directly contact that gray water, lettuce and spinach. Root crops eaten raw, carrots, radishes, and beets should also avoid direct gray water contact for safety reasons. Acid-loving plants like blueberries, azaleas, and rhododendrons generally struggle under gray water's naturally alkaline conditions too. A simple design rule solves most of this compatibility challenge instantly, without requiring extensive additional research. Soil turning visibly darker and more crumbly within one season is hard evidence this approach genuinely works. Watering trees and shrubs with greywater, while watering leafy greens and root crops with rainwater or municipal waterworks. That single practical split resolves roughly 90% of the entire plant compatibility challenge immediately and reliably. Even choosing the right plants, though, can't save a garden if the next critical step gets skipped entirely. Sixth, the soap swap, costing roughly $10 to $20 monthly, often less than current existing spending. This single change represents the real difference between a garden that thrives and one dying within 6 months. Standard laundry detergents and body soaps contain 3 specific ingredients that slowly poison garden soil over time. Sodium, boron, and chlorine bleach all cause serious long-term problems once applied repeatedly through greywater irrigation. A second layer of safety built into the system matters most exactly when something unexpected happens. Sodium builds up gradually in soil over months, hardening it while killing beneficial soil microbes steadily. Every load of laundry becoming a small, automatic act of irrigation is the quiet payoff worth building toward. Boron proves toxic to most plants, even at genuinely very low concentrations applied repeatedly over time. Chlorine kills exactly the beneficial microbial soil life anyone is actively trying to build through this system. The necessary swap involves switching to a plant-safe liquid detergent chosen deliberately for greywater compatibility, looking specifically for labels reading biodegradable, sodium-free, and boron-free matters enormously when selecting products. Several widely available detergent brands specifically market themselves as safe options for greywater irrigation systems. For body wash and shampoo, most simple Castile-style soaps work reliably well within greywater systems. Powdered detergents almost always contain sodium salts used as fillers, making them worth avoiding entirely here. Gravity-handling water movement for free removes an entire category of cost and maintenance most systems require. Making this particular switch often costs roughly the same as previous detergent spending under most household budgets. Clothes typically come out equally clean, while garden soil grows measurably darker and more crumbly within one season. A helpful rule of thumb involves avoiding any product whose ingredient list contains more than 8 unpronounceable items. That soap swap protects everything already built into this system, but one final piece keeps everything safe. Seventh, the overflow escape, costing roughly $10 to $20 in fittings, while keeping the system genuinely safe. Every greywater system genuinely needs a reliable escape route built in for handling unusual or problematic situations. When it rains for 3 straight days, soil stays already fully saturated without needing any additional water. Real numbers tracked across multiple months carry more weight than any single optimistic projection alone. When washing heavily soiled bedding on a hot cycle, that water needs to bypass the garden entirely. When leaving for vacation and a timer malfunctions somehow, that same escape route becomes genuinely essential too. In every one of those situations, a fast way to redirect water back to sewer matters enormously. The 3-way diverter valve handles that redirection at the source, functioning as the first layer of safety. The overflow escape functions as a genuine second layer of protection built further along the entire system. On the main greywater line, right before it exits through the wall, a Y-fitting gets installed there. That fitting includes a valve on the branch running back toward the sewer's standard connection point. A water bill dropping significantly within the very first month tends to convince even the most skeptical homeowner. When ground stays saturated or a load runs genuinely dirty, opening that valve closes the outdoor line instantly. That entire process takes roughly 2 seconds of effort without creating any real drama or complication whatsoever. Greywater should never sit inside an above-ground container for more than 24 hours under any circumstance. It goes anaerobic past that point, meaning it starts smelling badly, while growing bacteria plants genuinely dislike. Mulch basins solve that exact problem within the garden itself, while the overflow escape solves it back at the house. The outdoor line should also run gently downhill from the house toward the basins across its entire length. Even a modest ½ inch of drop per foot provides plenty of natural gravity flow for the system. Consistent moisture through dry stretches explains why fruit trees respond so dramatically to this kind of system. Gravity flows completely free of charge, while pumps cost real money up front and eventually break down too. That covers the complete 7-piece loop, running under $200 in total combined material costs. That modest system turns an entire house into a genuine garden irrigation source, running continuously without stopping. Small, deliberate choices about soap and plumbing compound into real independence over a surprisingly short time frame. 4 summers ago, a water bill hit $187 within a single difficult drought month. A quarter-acre food garden was running at the time. Tomatoes, peppers, and a young orchard included. A dozen raised beds rounded out that entire garden setup, requiring consistent daily watering throughout that period. Hand-watering everything at 6 in the morning became necessary simply to avoid losing that entire season's harvest. Avoiding these specific mistakes early saves both money and frustration, compared to learning them the hard way. Standing there one morning with a hose, watching the meter spin, brought some genuinely uncomfortable math into focus. Continuing that pace meant watering alone would cost over $900 across that single difficult summer. That figure exceeded the combined cost of seeds, mulch, and fertilizer for that entire growing season combined. That garden was supposed to save real money on groceries, yet it was quietly draining the budget instead. Greywater had come up before, but it seemed like something requiring a plumber, a permit, and thousands of dollars. Sitting down one Saturday to actually research local regulations revealed something genuinely surprising about that assumption. That specific state turned out to be one of the permit-free states covered earlier in this video. A system running cleanly for years proves the upfront planning was worth the initial weekend of effort. The actual required parts list turned out to be embarrassingly short compared to those original assumptions. The washing machine alone was discovered to be sending away roughly 4,000 gallons yearly, unused. That represented almost half of what the entire orchard actually needed across a typical growing season. $143 got spent at the hardware store early the very next morning afterward. A diverter valve, PVC pipe, a Y-fitting, tubing, wood chip bags, and plant-safe detergent covered that total. The entire installation took just one focused Saturday afternoon to complete from start to finish. The following month, the water bill dropped by $68 compared to the previous month's total. The month after that, it dropped by $94 compared to typical previous summer water spending. Thinking less about the garden hose is a small but genuinely meaningful shift in daily mental load. Apple trees showed the biggest growth flush ever observed on that property across several previous growing seasons. Tomatoes stopped cracking entirely since they finally received consistent moisture through every dry stretch instead of irregular watering. Years later, that same original system keeps running reliably, since expanded further with a shower bypass added. 9 total mulch basins now handle irrigation across that property, with total spending still staying under $200. That's when genuine conviction replaced initial skepticism, driven entirely by real, measurable financial results rather than ideology. Now for the 5 mistakes worth avoiding, ones that nearly derailed this entire project during setup. First mistake, storing Greywater in a container and letting it simply sit there for extended periods. Combining 2 simple systems together offsets far more water use than either one accomplishes running alone. Greywater goes anaerobic within 24 hours, meaning it turns smelly while growing bacteria harmful to plants. Using it within the same day, or sending it to sewer instead, avoids that problem entirely without exception. Second mistake, routing Greywater onto a lawn or any above-ground surface where pooling could occur. Nearly every state code permitting Greywater specifically requires discharge under at least 2 inches of mulch or soil. Surface pooling makes an entire system instantly illegal, while creating a genuine health hazard for anyone nearby. None of this demands perfection on day one, just a willingness to start with the biggest water source first. Mulch basins solve this specific problem completely, while spray heads or sprinklers simply cannot solve it at all. Third mistake, using the wrong soap and only noticing the problem once soil health already starts declining. That kind of combined result is straightforward arithmetic, rather than anything resembling wishful thinking or exaggeration. This particular problem unfolds slowly, since sodium buildup takes months before visibly showing in struggling plants. By the time plants start looking genuinely sickly, the underlying soil has already become significantly contaminated. Switching soaps before activating the system, rather than after problems appear, avoids that entire slow-motion issue. Fourth mistake: forgetting to install a 3-way diverter valve when first setting up this entire system. Some people hard plumb their washer directly to the garden line, assuming they'll never wash a dirty load. Then paint stained rags, bleach heavy whites, or sick household members requiring chlorine inevitably come up eventually. That valve costs just $20 while protecting an entire system from a single genuinely problematic load. None of this requires rare materials or specialized skills, just basic tools and a single weekend of time. Fifth mistake: watering leafy greens and root vegetables directly using Greywater despite using plant-safe detergent. Even with safe soap, salad greens and raw eaten roots simply aren't worth the associated food safety risk. Reserving those specific beds for rainwater or municipal water instead protects food safety without much extra effort. Watering fruit trees, berry bushes, ornamentals, and cook-first vegetables with Greywater instead makes far more sense. Avoiding these 5 specific mistakes tends to keep a system running cleanly for a decade or more reliably. Picture a homestead exactly like this one, 3 years after a proper Greywater loop gets fully installed. The water bill during dry summer months starts looking remarkably similar to a typical winter month's bill. A property that captures its own water quietly becomes more resilient with each passing dry season. Fruit trees put on second and third growth flushes thanks to consistent moisture through every dry stretch. Soil around every mulch basin turns dark, worm-rich, and gives easily under gentle thumb pressure. Thinking constantly about the garden hose simply stops happening once this entire system runs smoothly and automatically. Panicking during sudden heat waves also stops happening once consistent irrigation becomes a fully automated background process. Every load of laundry turns into a slow, deep root zone watering event happening entirely for free. That represents the first real layer of genuine water independence built directly into an existing property. Combining Greywater with rainwater catchment can realistically offset 60 to 80% of outdoor water use. That resilience compounds over years in ways a single dramatic before and after photo could never fully capture. That range applies across most climates, with arid regions sometimes pushing past 100% with proper storage. That's not some idealistic fantasy at all. That's simply straightforward arithmetic already proven across countless properties. Thousands of homesteads have already quietly figured this exact system out and put it into daily practice. So here is a genuine question worth sitting with. Which specific area of a property uses the most water currently? The orchard, the main garden, a greenhouse, or livestock watering needs all deserve honest consideration here. Drop that answer in the comments below, since every single one gets read and genuinely considered afterward. If this changed how household water gets looked at, hitting subscribe brings new self-sufficiency builds every single week. A house was never just a house. It was always also a quiet, overlooked source of free irrigation water.